Greetings, welcome ladies and gents, I'm the Super Gamer, and welcome to the 2019 edition of Super Gamer Reloaded. This is the show where I re-review all 40 games for the first 2 seasons of the show, because those reviews suck and they are severely outdated, so I gotta do them all over again. And what better way to start off the year than by taking a look at one of my favorite franchises, Sonic the Hedgehog.
As many of you should know by now, I am a huge fan of the Sonic the Hedgehog series. It has brought some of the best and most fun times I've had playing video games. Lately, however, the series has been in kind of a rough spot. Sonic Forces wasn't exactly a success, and people still have doubts about Team Sonic Racing coming out later this year. So it begs the question, when will Sega get their crap straightened out? Who knows, really. But in the meantime, I figured we'd take a look back at where it all started with Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis and released in 1991. Sonic was made to rival the acclaimed Mario back in the 90s, and Sega's efforts paid off. To this day, Sonic is still considered to be one of the most iconic video game mascots in history. Why is that exactly? Because Sonic was marketed to be the edgier version of the cute animal mascot, which granted him a lot of love from the public. So today, we're going to take a look at where it all started with his first game. With that said, this is Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Genesis. In the colorful land of Mobius, the evil Dr. Ivo Robotnik has been capturing the animal inhabitants and turning them into slaves for his robot army, in an attempt to find the 6 Chaos Emeralds at the time to use their power for his evil purposes. A blue hedgehog known as Sonic seeks out to put a stop to Dr. Robotnik's plans and rescue the animals from Mobius one stage at a time. Overall, the story for the first Sonic game is pretty simple and straightforward. Rescue the animals, and put a stop to the Mad Doctor's plans. There really isn't all that much to it, honestly. It's just a pretty simple story. As the first game in the Sonic series goes, Sonic 1 actually looks pretty good for a nearly 30-year-old game. All the sprites are well designed and memorable, the color palettes are spot on, and the environments are all really varied and colorful. The sound design of Sonic 1 is fairly decent, with perfect sounds made for when you kill the enemy, gain or lose rings, and when you roll into a ball for maximum speed, it feels really satisfying. As far as the soundtrack is concerned, Sonic 1's music is pretty good. Not great like 2, 3, and Knuckles soundtracks, but definitely has its favorites. The ones that I remember the most are Green Hill Zone, of course, Starlight Zone, and Scrap Brain Zone. Again, it doesn't compare to its sequels, but it gets the job done well. Sonic the Hedgehog games are at their core platformers. However, what separates the franchise from the rest is Sonic's signature speed. Most people like to think that speed is what defines Sonic, when really it's both speed and platforming that makes this series fun. Your health consists of golden rings, which are incredibly common. As long as you still have one ring on you, you can take as many hits as you like and not die. Unless it's from crush damage, drowning, or bottomless pit, in which case, it doesn't matter. Really, this concept of a platformer is incredibly easy to grasp. Bust robots, collect rings, and run through all the obstacles in your way. However, one of my biggest issues for the first game is that, for a Sonic game, Sonic 1 is admittedly pretty slow. If you don't want to end up losing all your lives stupidly, then it's pretty much required for you to tread carefully, as a lot of these levels have hazards that you can only avoid with careful platforming. People like to claim that the Genesis Sonic games are fun, fast-paced platformers. Well, I wouldn't really say that's the case for Sonic 1. Now, I still have fun with the game, don't get me wrong, but for supposedly being fast, it sure doesn't feel very fast. The speed and platforming balance wouldn't be perfected until Sonic 3 Knuckles. Case in point, Labyrinth Zone, one of the worst water levels ever made. If you thought this game was too slow already, wait until you reach this place, because now you have to stop for air every 30 seconds just to not drown and go through some of the worst platforming segments ever put in a platformer. Another big issue I have is that when you get a game over, unless you have a continue, you are forced to play through the whole game all over again. Bear in mind that this game came out in 1991, when games like Super Mario Bros. 3 were out, and at least had the decency of having unlimited continues. So there is absolutely no reason why Sonic 1 couldn't have the same thing. And finally, my biggest issue with the game as a whole are the special stages. See, if you manage to bring at least 50 rings to the end of a stage that isn't a boss, you are granted access to the special stages where you can find the 6 Chaos Emeralds, and they are just awful. You travel through a maze, searching for the emerald, which is guarded by crystals you must break. There are several problems with these stages. 1, the stage is always moving, preventing you from having full control. 2nd, the control itself is very wonky, as you can only move around by jumping all over the place. 3, the stages have surprise exits that will kick you out of the stage with no option to try again if you fall into them. 4, bumpers are everywhere in these stages. 5th, going into special stages is the only way to get a continue, which is really freaking stupid. Why place the only reliable continue system in the middle of a bunch of dreadful special stages? It just exists to anger the player. And what do you get for finding all 6 Chaos Emeralds? Well...
Ah, spoiler alert!
After you make your way through a very challenging and tricky final world that is Scrap Brain Zone, and going through Labyrinth Zone Act 4, you finally come face to face with the Mad Doctor himself. This final boss is, in all honesty, pretty dull. Aside from the fact that you aren't even given any rings for this fight, even if you do know what to do, it's just kind of a drag. But trust me, wait until I look at Sonic 2 to see how bad they can really get. After sending Robotnik plummeting down to the ground, Sonic has rescued all the animals of Mobius, and thus the day is saved. And the only thing that you get for collecting all the Chaos Emeralds is a slightly alternate version of the ending with flowers. Not worth it.
The original Sonic the Hedgehog has honestly aged pretty well, despite my criticisms. I mean, it's still fun to play, even to this very day. I will say, for a Sonic game, it is pretty slow in comparison to its sequels, and especially to the Boost games of the modern era. But overall, I will have to say that it is still my second favorite Sonic game on the Genesis. So, I mean, that has to say something, right? And I know that's putting it above Sonic 2, but we'll get to that. With that said, I'm going to give the original Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis a 4 out of 5. Until then, I'm a Super Gamer, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye!